Well, what's going on, everybody? It's Jerome Reid here, and I'm joined today by Edgar Sandoval Jr. This guy has a strong passion, not only for Jesus, but he loves his wife unconditionally, and he may or may not be an artist and founder of Vision of Leo. Edgar, I'm so excited that you are here today. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Yes, sir. Let's get it going.
Awesome, man. Well, first off, right off the bat, I have to ask this question to kind of break the ice.
Yeah,
Marvel or DC?
bro, that's a no-brainer. That's a no-brainer. It's Marvel all day.
Okay,
It's Marvel
awesome.
all
All
day.
right, listen. Okay, we can keep this conversation going now because it's Marvel. Who's your favorite superhero,
Spidey. Gotta go with Spidey.
dude? Same here.
Really?
Right on. Oh yeah,
Bro, ever since I was a little kid, it was like I wanted to be Spider. It was two things. It was the Lion King and
yeah,
Spider-Man. I don't know
yeah,
why it was the Lion King. I guess I got inspired. But yeah, literally Spider-Man, day one. Day
dude.
one.
Right away, we have two things in common because for me, I think my first birthday party was Lion King, and so
Mhm.
I loved Lion King ever since then. And then I've always wanted to be Spider-Man, to the point, and I won't disclose all my information, but let's just say there wasn't maybe there was a time where I was a kid and I found a spider outside, and I thought it'd be cool to let it bite me. It didn't, but kids can dream. They got a big imagination.
Bro, literally, that's kind of crazy. My first birthday was also Lion King as well, bro. Like my mom dressed me up in the whole Simba outfit, all that kind of stuff. Bro, the real question is who's your favorite Spider-Man?
Oh, oh. So like what are we talking here? Are we talking
Like,
like
I'm just talking Toby,
okay,
Andrew,
okay, 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 okay.
or
Or
Tom.
Tom Honk. Okay. Okay. So I think we're around the same age. So I grew up with Toby
Yeah.
Maguire. I have to say Toby's my Spider-Man,
Mm,
but Tom Holland has been coming out with like the most accurate version. So I
yeah.
have to say Tom Holland.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm gonna have to say Tom Holland's like my favorite Peter,
Yeah.
but but yeah.
You
Well,
think Andrew?
dude, I don't know. I don't listen. I love them all, but I'm gonna have to say Toby's my favorite Spider-Man, and then Tom
No
is like
cap.
best Peter Parker. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Especially with the new things coming out, hopefully.
No, I'm
It
such a
should be
nerd. I'm
exciting.
such a nerd for that stuff.
Buddy,
Yeah.
I'm the same way. Don't worry. Like, I'm sure we'll have a lot more conversations after this about that
Yeah, it's true
for
for
days.
real.
So Edgar, what does the day in the life look like for you?
Oh my gosh, bro. Let's just get into it. It looks different in like different seasons in my
Mm-hmm.
life. So the last kind of crazy season, I'd say pre-COVID, like obviously I was in college, I was studying, I was in a group called Cape Lion. So like my days looked like pretty much school,
Mm-hmm.
worship team, and then like make rap music. And then during COVID, I like got married pretty much in the house all the time with my family. And it was just like making TikToks and like my wife doing that as well. But now, bro, it's been such a crazy we're kind of in a transitional season in life right now where God's about to I feel he's taking us out of our comfort zone even
Mm-hmm.
more and getting ready to launch us into our next thing. Um i.e. Vision of Leo.
Yeah.
Uh, but right now, a day in the life, I am in Arkansas at my wife's house recently, or my wife's parents' house. Super fun, by the
Yeah.
way. Especially when you're trying to just save money and just kind of like we were living in Texas, we lived in Florida, we did the whole deal,
Wow.
just traveling on and on. But God really told us, he said, no, I want you to step out of your comfort zone in this season, and I need you to commit this time to me. It's not going to look glamorous. It's to the outside. It's not going to look it's not going to be comfortable. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to be extremely uncomfortable. I'm going to put you, in your in-laws house, which God bless them for like taking us in and just having us like regroup and figure out what is God saying to us in this season. So right now it seems like this is gonna sound so spiritual, but
Yeah.
God's been waking me up at around 5 a.m. every day.
Wow.
No alarm clock or anything like that. And not to sound like a weird Christian or anything like that, but literally I will just shoot up at around 5 a.m. I check my phone. says 5 a.m. And I'm like, okay, that's just God calling. And I go out to this field and I just talk with him for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really just have a conversation with him. Sometimes God speaks, other days he's just really silent and it's more of like reflective. Um, but sometimes when God wants you to step into something new, the
Mm-hmm.
Holy Spirit will put like ideas inside of you. And so those mornings I've been feeling a lot recently like the Holy Spirit is planting ideas inside of me.
Yeah.
And I have to check them with God first and make sure that like we're on the same page so that it's not just a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so really that is honestly the biggest thing that has been a part of my daily routine in this season of my life is devoting time to the Lord uh,
Yeah.
in the early hours of the morning. And then coming back, I'll like come back home, stay awake for a little bit, maybe take a nap, wake up again. Um, and then just do like tedious bookkeeping stuff for like music and things like that. And just spending time with family.
Yeah.
Uh, that's kind of, because Emily does music full time. I do music full time. And so, music is always, paying the bills and getting streams, blah, blah, blah. So it's not like we have go to work at 9 a.m. at 9 a.m.,
Yeah.
come back home. So it's not really like that. So it looks really unique right now, my
Mm-hmm.
daily schedule. But like I said, it's just up at 5 a.m., sometimes 6, other days even like 3 a.m. And I'm like, you're funny, God. Like I'm going
Yeah.
back. I'm going back to bed. And yeah, just really, really pressing in right now. It feels like a
Yeah.
very pressing and uncomfortable season. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that, man. Honestly, I think that's really inspiring, especially for the people listening who think God's not awake at 5 a.m. Clearly, that's false because
Hmm.
obviously he's awake all the time. But just to be able to get up at that time of day can be very uncomfortable for a lot of people. Some people, they're either going to bed that time of day because they work, the other hours of the
Right.
day. But I think that's something, and you touched on like being able to be creative and get some thought process and to pray and to think through things. How in that moment of you either maybe getting up at 5 a.m. or maybe this is something that just came upon you lately, like your passion for creativity and for art, like how did that start for you?
How did it start? Like the origins, like even back in the day.
Yeah, like just talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
The origins of like music, really, bro. My goal in life was to be a professional soccer player, and that was where I was
Wow.
kind of headed. Through ages like 15, 16, probably 16. Those are like the formative years of my life. And so I really committed it to soccer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I played for the state team of Ohio at one point, and then after that was like regionals, and regionals would be the US men's national team of like my age group. And I got injured, and so it completely crushed me around like
Wow.
16. It completely crushed me. Like whole family was looking forward to me making regionals and seeing what was next, seeing if scouts would ever consider me to actually represent like the state of Ohio further, a regional further, and eventually maybe like the national team. But I got injured during one of the practices, and I just kind of went back to high school, started kept going with my education and that kind of thing. I think I was like a sophomore, junior in high school, something around there. And I didn't I didn't know what I was gonna do. I didn't know what my
Mm-hmm.
passions were. I didn't know anything like that. Um, but I will say around those years, I think it was like 2013 or 14, something like that. Um, Justin Bieber like started like blowing up as like a kid. I remember his song
Yeah.
like One Time. And I thought this
Yep.
kid was like, the coolest kid in the entire world. I'm like, dang, this kid long hair, like makes cool music. And so as strange as it may sound, like I started listening to pop music.
Yeah.
First artist being Justin Bieber. And then I started to get into music. I thought it was so cool. All the guys at school would like kind of dress like him
Yeah.
and do the hair down and all that kind of thing. And that was what got my interest in music. I remember he put out an acoustic album for Believe, and bro, my dad would make me mow the lawn once a week. He'd pay me like
Mm-hmm.
$15 to mow the lawn. And as I'm sitting there on the little tractor, I'm like listening to the Believe
Yeah.
acoustic album,
Yep.
singing it out, learning all the words. And that was kind of where I taught myself incorrectly to
Hmm.
sing. There was no sort of like, I didn't learn any of the technicalities of singing right and stuff like that. And that would be the beginning of my musical journey, listening to his music as a young kid and being inspired by that, teaching myself sort of how
Yeah.
to get a tune out.
Yeah.
And then my music, career would go through phases as I grew up.
Dude, I think that right there is pretty awesome to hear. Shout out to Justin Bieber. He might not be listening to this, but you never know. Because when I remember when Justin Bieber came out, and for me, I was all about the color purple after that, because
Mm-hmm.
that was his thing. So I used to wear the purple hoodies, and I used to try to dress, like him, Supras. I remember he used to wear Supras,
Oh, the
and that,
Supras.
yeah, bro. And I remember trying to get those. I was like, nah, I can't afford it. But it's cool that someone around our age kind of influenced you or
Yeah.
encouraged you in that way without even him knowing.
Yeah.
And for to see where that started and to kind of see like what God's been doing now is extremely inspiring. And for the people listening, like if you're in a place where you just don't know what to do next, always look at someone that you think's inspiring, kind of
Mm-hmm.
model that, and then God will say,
Mm-hmm.
keep that part, take that away. He'll do his
Wow.
molding and
So
fashioning,
good.
which is really good.
Wow.
And to kind of get into this next part of the vision of Leo, because we talked about that a little bit at the beginning, and it's kind of what God's doing right now. You mentioned that in this season. So how did the vision of Leo come together?
Man, that's a great question. So all my life, I've always wanted to be, somebody. I've always desired a platform, and that's not inherently wrong, but I
No.
desired it. I desired it to the point where it was almost idolatrous. And
Mhm.
the irony of that is, while I desired a platform, all my life as a kid, I had prophetic words and just things spoken over me of how God was going to use me in an area of influence. So it was weird because all these words were about, oh, God's going to use you in an area. And then simultaneously, I'm like selfishly desiring that. I'm like, okay, bring it on. Let's go. Let's
Yeah.
go. But I had to unlearn, and I had to tear down and allow God to really like prune me, like you were saying, like allow God to take things away, put things back on. God to I had to allow God to allow disappointments on this
Mhm.
journey of being used, or whatever that is, in order to understand what being used truly looks like, especially when it's for the kingdom. Because at the end of the day, it's solely for the glory of God, and we're just tools that God is using along the way.
Yeah.
That's not to say that we don't matter. Of course we do. But at the end of the day, when God wants to use us, you'd be surprised as to how. And
Yeah.
I thought that I knew how, for so long. We talk about like how I learned songs with Justin Bieber, like taught myself how to sing, like listening to his stuff. Like I thought that was influence.
Mhm.
I thought influence meant followers. I thought influence meant, photo shoots and music videos and shaking hands with this person. And sure, that is a form of influence. But God needed to tear down those idols that I had made in order for him to truly work in me. And so with Vision of Leo is sort of the culmination of all of these projects, artist projects, and things that I've done in the past. It's sort of a culmination that now gives glory to God.
Wow.
Um, I think there was, in the beginning stages of my musical career or whatever, it was all about me.
Mhm.
In the middle stages, it was half about me and half about God.
Ah.
But now I feel with Vision of Leo that it is, I see it as a ministry, really.
Mhm.
I see it as something that gives complete glory to God, using all my experience with the music industry and styles, music genres, all that kind of thing, even down to just like making reels or YouTube videos and stuff like that. Like every skill that I've acquired over the past however so years
Hmm.
is now being all channeled to the Lord. And honestly, I'm still doing it imperfectly. Um, but like you said, like until the day that we die, God is going to continue to prune me and take things out and put things
Yeah.
back in. So and Vision of Leo really came to life, I'd say, over the last year. And it came to life, I guess, the name and the idea behind it. And God is still defining it today.
Hmm.
um, it still feels like it is in its infancy, but at the end of the day, I'm really happy that I'm working on this project now, even though it may not be the biggest thing in the entire world. Like, it is doing, I believe, to whatever degree, whatever the numbers are, it is doing what the Lord wants it to do in this
Yeah.
season. And so I find peace in that.
Yeah. I love that, dude. I think what you're doing uh resonates with me because I thought for myself, influence, success was based on, what I saw other people do. So celebrities, actors, athletes, I thought that was success. And for the longest time, I tried to strive toward, like, I did track and field for a long time. And I thought, if I can just make it somewhere, that will make me be somebody. And it got to the point where I was getting so close to making the Olympics. I was just a
Mm,
couple years away. And then I was facing a position where I switched schools, and literally it was, do I go to work? I had to start going to work at that time in my life, or do I not go to work and try to help my family and do all those things, or do I try to pursue this dream that might also put me in trouble because practice was after school and I could be doing so much more with that. So I had to make the decision, I'm just gonna
mm,
have to quit track. And I remember for the longest time resenting, not really my family or anything, but more myself. Jerome, you made a bad decision. What are you doing? I saw my coach on the Olympic team for 2012 in London. I'm like, that could have been me. I could have been with him. And not realizing that God was doing something up until this point in my life, I can now look back. And I think what you said with how you started off, it was all about you. Then it
mm.
was a bit about you, a bit about God. Now it's like, God, I'm all in type of thing. And it might not look successful or glamorous to everyone else. I just want to encourage you that what you're doing, because because God said to do it, I think that's what's more important. And we'll talk a little bit more about that with our time here. But I
Right.
just want to encourage you, like, keep doing what you're doing, because there's going to be people that are going to be like, hey, I'm tired of this. I just need someone who's authentic and their music's raw and it's about God. And then they're going to stumble on your stuff and realize, oh my goodness, like, where did
Right.
this guy come from? Who's Vision of Leo? So I
Right.
just see that for you. And I just want to encourage you with that. And I kind of knew my question earlier about Marvel or DC. I kind of knew the answer because you have a song called Bucky's Hand.
Yeah.
And that song, what I love about that song is you touch on a little bit, for the people that are nerds like us, they kind of know what you mean by Bucky's hand, but
Hmm.
the references is a lot about God and who he is and how powerful he is. But for the listeners who don't know that song, definitely go check it out. But how did that song come together?
That song came together. So there's this producer named Jolst, and I pretty much was like searching YouTube for like beats and stuff like that. And I was kind of in like not the dark parts of YouTube, but the very like unseen parts of YouTube where there's like videos have like 90 views.
Mm-hmm.
And I came across this dude's beat, which had like 50 views. And I'm like, oh, shoot, this is so nice. And I just started writing to it. I hit him up on Instagram. I came up with the hook. We were living in Florida. So it was like, I was just sitting there. I'm like, tell myself I'll be fine. Da-na-na-na-na-na. And I was like, what if I played like with this, love that I have for Marvel, but also tied it into God's hand. And the hook came about just like quickly. I was just in my zone,
Mm-hmm.
and I hit up the producer, and I'm like, yo, I have this hook. Listen, I love your beat. Like, I think your stuff should be getting thousands upon thousands of views. Is there any way I could like pay you for this, to have this beat exclusively? And he was like, yeah, sure. Like, here's my rate. I'm like, boom, I'm paying for it. I just believe in it that much. And
Mm-hmm.
we've kept in touch ever since. But it was really, most of my songs come to life relatively quickly. I don't know why. I don't really think I don't spend like a week on like a hook or a week on a verse. And if I get stumped, I naturally just kind of like toss it to the side and work on something new.
Hmm.
Uh, but most of actually, honestly, all of the songs that are out that I've ever released have been done within a day or two.
Wow.
It hasn't really the process doesn't necessarily take that long. So super simple process for Bucky's Hand. It was really fun and honestly, kudos to Jolst. He's a great producer. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, man. Now, for the people who might not know your style of music, how would you rate or explain your style of music in 3 words, if you could?
Oh man. Um,
I know I put you on the spot.
I'd say, well, I mean, I don't hate talking about myself or trying to compliment myself, but like I'd basically say like innovative faith pop.
I like that.
Um, but then again, there's like some hip hop in there. So I'm like, I really am trying to push the envelope with Christian music. I think Christian
Hmm.
music has stayed like kind of stagnant still. And there are some innovators in the game that are really doing it big and really like pushing the envelope for Christian music.
Hmm.
But something I want to do is like I said, since I learned to do music by listening to Justin Bieber and seeing, you know, how big and famous he was and how he really changed pop music like about a decade ago. I want to do the same thing,
Hmm.
but in the Christian kind of space, and not just creating Christian like dope songs, but I also want people to feel um, kind of what I felt when I was listening to Justin Bieber. And, you know, when I was a kid, obviously I thought like a kid, I reasoned like a kid. I want to be like famous, I want to be on stage. But
Hmm.
with Vision of Leo and with every song that I put out from this day forward, I want people to almost feel the presence of God through a genre that they might not have ever thought they could experience the presence of God
Yeah.
from,
Yeah. That's good.
while at the same time hearing something that they've never really heard before, or Christian music tackling genres that naturally we stay away from.
Yeah.
So for example, like I have a song called Bleedin', and that song, there's this artist, her name's like Pink Pantheress, and she does like drum and bass type stuff.
Hmm.
uh, it's super like different. And I was like, you know what, I heard that and I'm like, why is no one doing that in the like faith space? So I did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And so kind of like those things, playing with genres that are popular in the secular world and attacking those from a faith-based perspective, and then also just kind of being innovative and pushing the envelope in Christian music, because I for the longest time I think the Christian industry has kind of like been behind. You know, the same stuff is kind of played on the radio, and
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
no one really feels like the presence as they did back in like 2001. You know what I mean? So I'm
Yeah.
just trying to push the envelope in that area.
So you literally just touched on something at the end, and it's a question I had. It was near the end, but I'm going to bring it up now because you said something that I think so many people do not understand. How you said music's growing, it's advancing. And I like to tell people it's kind of like if you think of a cell phone or an iPhone. The iPhone started off one way, and if you look at the iPhone now, we're at what, 13, and it's
Yeah.
probably going to go to 14, but it's advanced. Every year the iPhone is advanced. And I find music to some degree has not advanced in some aspects, but how important do you think it is for music to advance with the culture and things like that?
I think it's super important, because from a ministry perspective, like there are kids born in 2013 that are listening to a Jack Harlow,
Yeah.
and they were raised believers, but they like the sound of Jack Harlow.
Yep.
And sorry about that. Sorry if you can hear all those
Oh, no,
notifications.
no, it's all good,
I
bro.
need to mute all that. Yeah, I'll do that. Sorry, I'm gonna text family.
No, no, no worries, man.
But anyways, it's like I see these kids just kind of desiring that kind of music and they listen to it, but it's so important just from a ministry perspective, tackling those genres.
Hmm.
um, there are kids who just naturally gravitate to hip hop or top 40 radio or Drake and stuff like that, and I feel like just as ambassadors of Christ, we need to be using our gifts to continue to push the envelope and get the gospel out there in new ways.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, there's, a Drake out there getting billions of streams, and kids are listening to it. Even kids in like youth group are listening to it.
Yep.
But we got to keep up, and if not, advance
Yeah.
what's happening in the secular industry. And I think Christian music is honestly going to get to a point, I'm praying, where stylistically it advances what's happening in secular music.
Yeah.
That's what I'm praying for. And I think we saw a little bit of that with like Kanye a couple of years ago, with like Jesus is King and gospel music being like cool, considered cool and stuff like that. And
Yep.
so yeah, it's really interesting, but it's definitely something that I am so passionate for, and I hope people can hear that through the stuff that I put out.
Yeah. I can definitely resonate with what you're saying right now, because so I'm a pastor in Canada. I also do a bunch of other things, but ministry is one of my main parts of who Jerome is. Not just in the church, but just in general. And I've been teaching my young adults and talking to people about this aspect that God laid on my heart 2 years ago, about the fact that he's the ultimate creator, and he created us. I believe it. He created us to create. And I think if God, who created all things, has created us in his image, we should be willing, especially for believers who know what we're talking about, we should be willing to create things. And the Bible talks about how we should be doing more than what Jesus did. We should be just as creative, but even more so than anyone else in the secular industry. And I feel like a lot of times Christians like to look at what everyone else is doing and like, oh, I can never get there because so-and-so is so much better. But it's like,
Yeah.
but don't worry about so-and-so. Worry about what God said to you. Like that should be the most important thing. But at the same time, you and I probably know this, but there's a generation out there of young people who are kind of caught between both sides of, I know what God says, but then culture looks like this. And so it's almost like Christianity is now not that attractive because what everyone else is doing. Some people are doing things in a secular world, and they'll mention God in their acceptance speech, and they'll go, oh, they're a Christian, I'm going to follow what they're doing. But what would you say to the person who's struggling with choosing, either side of, do I follow what God says, even though it's not as attractive as whatever the culture's standards are?
Oh man, that's a great question. And I feel like I am constantly living in that tension to new levels in every season that God takes me. You cannot pursue God's calling and also be comfortable. I heard that this week. If you want what God has in store for your life to come to pass, if you desire that, naturally our hearts and our flesh is going to kind of oppose that, and we're going to oppose any sort of growth or any sort of friction that might attack our comfortable way of living. At least for me, like, even just I can only speak from experience. The past year, my wife and we moved to beautiful Sarasota, Florida, and God did not tell us to do that at all. He wanted us to stay in Austin, Texas. But because, we were just, I don't know, we got selfish. We wanted to go be by the beach. We wanted to go live in paradise. We moved to Sarasota. We packed everything up. I canceled my apartment lease and we booked it. And if you have been following me, you would have seen that I had a great time in Florida. It was beautiful, blah, blah, blah. It was so fun. But things started happening. We got a dog, and the dog got incredibly sick, to the point where we couldn't even keep the dog because its medical bills were just like stacking.
Wow.
Not only that, there's this thing called red tide, which is it barely happens, but it happened literally the month that we moved, where there is toxicity in the ocean water. Wow. So we couldn't go to the beach. And even if you stepped foot near a beach, like the smell of the toxins would make you start coughing right away. So all beaches were empty. So that happened. We're like, okay, like that's cool. On top of that, our cost of living was a little high. I'm
Right.
not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And so that was like, what am I? Oh man, like I really want to be like by the beach. This is where I'm comfortable. This is what I want. Like,
Yeah.
I really just want to be here and make this happen for me. But things just started not working out. And
Mhm.
for a season, we kind of pulled ourselves out of God's plan. And so after about 3 months, I was like, you know what? Me and my wife were like, we gotta go back. We gotta go back to Texas because we're striving. We're trying to
Mhm.
make something happen that is not really in God's plan for us right now. And that's an example of us being disobedient.
Mhm.
Uh, and it's funny and stuff like that. But at the time, like it to pack up and move and then for God to be like, you gotta go back. Like that's where I had you. Uh,
Yeah.
we could have stayed, but because I desire God's plan to come to fruition in my life over my plan, we packed it all up. We headed back to Austin, Texas. And long story short, we were in Austin, Texas for about 4 months, and God finally closed that chapter around April. Just spending time again. God was waking me up around 5 a.m. in our
Mhm.
apartment in Texas, and I started to feel little ideas like, okay, it's time to leave Texas, time to go back to Arkansas, blah blah blah. And I'd pray for confirmation, and people would text me randomly. I'd get random words, and so it was just God's hand over
Yeah.
it. Okay, God closed that chapter. I say this to say that everybody needs to ask themselves at the end of the day, do you desire God's plan more or your plan more?
Mhm.
And all my life, I've desired God's plan, and I haven't done it perfectly.
Right.
So if you haven't done it perfectly, good. Don't beat yourself up.
That's right.
God will always course correct if your heart is in the right place. And for us, even though we moved to Florida, and that was not part of God's plan, that we could have saved ourselves so much money by not going, so much
Mhm.
time. But God ultimately course corrected because our hearts, we just positioned our hearts to be like, you know what, God, like this isn't what you called us to do. Um, and so I'd honestly have like a deep look in the mirror and really question your heart and be like, are you desiring God's plan right now, or are you desiring your plan?
Mhm.
And if you desire God's plan, ultimately God is going to guide it. Things are going to happen in your life. God is going to put impressions on your heart to say, hey, I want you to work on this song. Hey, I want you to shake hands with this person. Hey, you see that person sitting over there? Go talk to them. Go be their friend. Little things like that. God will just weave his plan perfectly if your heart is open,
Yeah.
more open to his plan than your plan. And so that's really what I would say for everyone to kind of have like a heart check.
Mhm.
There's no list of steps that I could say, this is how to make God's plan happen in your life. At the end of the day, he knows your heart. He knows your heart so well that even if you mess up, he'll course correct.
That's right.
And I feel like you know that with your life, with what you wanted to do, with the
Mhm.
like being a track, wanting to do sports with track and stuff like that. Like I'm sure God course corrected your life in so many different ways,
Yeah.
and he did with mine. And honestly, at the end of the day, it's just the heart, the position of the heart.
Yeah.
And if your heart desires your plan, your own carnal plan more than God's, you will I mean, you'll reap what you sow, and your life will play out the way you want it to. And so good luck
Mhm.
with that. Have fun with
Yeah.
that. But like I'm not here for it. I mean, I'm 27 years old. I gotta at this point in my life, like I am all in on God's plan. And
Yeah.
I'm starting to get little seeds and little hints of really insane things that God wants me to do that I'm a little nervous to step out in faith
Yep.
for it. But again, I desire God's plan over mine. So
Yeah.
to be continued.
Honestly, bro, like that. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. I love how you kind of put that all together, and thank you for sharing that story because that is a really inspiring story, and it's um definitely something I think many people can resonate with. I know my wife and I, like, we were in a position where we thought we were supposed to stay somewhere long term because I believe in longevity, and things were happening, and I remember saying, oh, it's all good, God's going to work it out. But then things started to get worse, and we
Mhm.
realized, okay, if things are getting worse and God's really, he gave us something, we put it away, we're like, nah, that's not for us. And all of a sudden we kind of get started to get pushed towards that thing. Then we realize, okay, God actually wants us to go because this is what he has. And we rather do what God wanted instead of dealing with, I kind of think about Noah and the
Mhm.
flood and listen to your story, and not saying that it's that extreme, but it's almost as if, we're like Noah and God's like, hey, this is what's going to happen. Time to go. And if we decided not to, we would probably end up like the people in the flood who died. And
Wow,
not physically dying, but maybe in a spiritual sense of
that's so
God.
good.
Yeah, like God's saying, hey, it's time to go. And we're like, nah, we're comfortable. We're going to stay here. And he's like, all right, I'm telling you, pack up things, go, because I got something better. But obviously,
Yeah,
the people thought Noah was insane because they're like, oh, what are you talking about? That's not going to happen. And if you know
right.
the story, you kind of know what God did by using Noah and his family.
Yeah.
Um, you have
Wow.
another song that I kind of wanted to bring out to talk about. It's a new
Mhm.
single of
Yeah.
yours. And it came out with a man who's no stranger to this podcast. We've had him a couple times, Joe L. Barnes. And that's an incredible song. It's called Fought for Love.
Yeah.
I love that song. And I also love your dance moves and the music video. I really do. I was watching it again this morning. I'm like, this should be my pump up type of dance to get myself going.
That's
But what is the for people who don't know, what's the heart and the meaning of that song?
Bro, it really means that God fought for a relationship with me. Like it almost goes back to like the heart thing, but like God literally chased me down. Um and I thought Joe was like the perfect guy to put on that song. Um just because I feel like he's very authentic through his social
Mm-hmm.
media. And we had been following each other on Instagram for a while. But I had seen like his posts, and even just the way he leads worship is so authentic. And
Yeah.
I wanted to bring that onto like a more pop record because number one, I thought it'd be unique. And number two, there's not many people that have a heart like he does. I mean, you can just see it through the way that he worships. It's so
Yeah.
authentic. It's so open to allow God to do whatever it is that he wants to do. He's not the type of artist that's just here for like, a couple photos on a red carpet or anything like that. Like he is so in it for for allowing God to work through him to reach people. That's what he's
Mm-hmm.
for. He's just for people. So I thought he was the perfect dude to get on this song. Um, and really, it just to me, I wanted to create something that felt radio friendly, but also was true biblically and also true to like God's nature. And I feel like that song encaptures kind of God's heart for us in a fun way, like
Mm-hmm.
not in it maybe not in like a total worshipy way, but it's in a fun way. And I think we serve a fun God.
Yeah.
I think he has a personality. I think he's funny. I think he loves us so much. And I wanted to kind of capture that even like with a little bit of rap and a little bit
Mm-hmm.
of like Joe's like he has this like worship essence to his voice that people just know.
Yep.
And I wanted to tie kind of rap and what he brings and bring it into one project. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy with how it turned out.
It really came out extremely well. The creativity behind the music video, I loved, like with the phone
Yeah.
and him doing his parts through the phone. I thought that was really cool. I don't think I've actually seen something like that before, but I found that really cool. And then again, the dance moves, bro.
I
That
tried to
that got
keep
me.
it. I tried to keep the music video as simple as possible. There's this artist. His name's he inspires me so much. His name's Montel Fish,
Hmm.
and he's just super creative, and he takes a lot of like video on just like old digital cameras and stuff like that. So I
Yeah.
wanted to feel when I literally, it's so random, but like my first time ever like with a camera. I was like 9 years old, and I would like film little vlogs with like my mom's like little cassette camera or whatever.
Yep.
I wanted to capture that feeling with the music video. I didn't want
Mhm.
like this high budget whatever. Like I could have done that, and I thought about it for a moment, but I was
Yeah.
like, you know what? I just want to have fun. Like the same feeling that I'm portraying in this song, I want to portray it in the music video. I want to portray my personality in the music video.
Yeah.
There's no like deep meaning to the music video or anything like that. Like what you see is what you get. The dance
Yeah.
moves, like they mean anything.
That's right.
uh there's nothing deep. Like I'm just out there just moving my hips the way
Having
the Holy
fun.
Spirit wants.
That's right, man.
uh, but and then yeah, throwing in those little like I love to paint too, so I did a couple
Yeah.
like labeling things and basically said like there's a part in the music video where it's like drugs and alcohol, and I'm like standing behind it. I'm like, no, I can't do that. And
Yeah.
it feels like those old like anti-drug videos that you would watch like
Yep.
in high school or something like
Yep.
that. So nothing deep to it. I was just having fun with it, just being as creative as I can, you
I
know.
love it, man. I got one more question, and then we'll wrap up our time. We both know, based on hearing your heart and hearing everything to say, I do have to say this before we go on. Like, you've been inspiring. This I probably said that word maybe 10 times, because it you really are. Like, the stuff you've been saying, not just to the people listening, but even to myself, not even knowing you, but just literally having this conversation with you, and be like, oh my goodness, this guy's legit. I can tell the authenticity from your voice, hearing how passionate you are about the Lord, about your family, about your music. So I just want to again encourage you, like, keep doing what you're doing,
Thank you.
because it's important. And it kind of ties into this last question that I have. And being a creative in the year 2022, how important do you think it is to have community?
Wow. That's a great question. I think community is super important, and it looks different in different seasons.
Hmm.
Right now, I've had many different seasons where when I was doing Cape Lions, and people can search that up. When I was doing that, my community was like I had three best friends, and we
Hmm.
all basically did everything together. Me and my buddy Gospel, we would literally serve at Church Home, which is like a church up in Seattle.
Yeah.
And so that was like my community, like the worship team, all that kind of stuff. When my wife and I got married during like the pandemic, my community was like her and
Hmm.
my family for the time that that we were up there. When we were in Austin, Texas, we had a group of friends, my wife and like a bunch of married couples and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And now that we're in Arkansas, my community is family.
Hmm.
So it looks different in different seasons, but I
I
think
like that.
I think it's important not to allow yourself to get isolated.
Yeah.
When you get isolated, you are prone to spiritual attacks. You're prone to the enemy putting thoughts inside your mind. And I
Hmm.
will say this: when Emily and I moved to Florida, we did not have any sort of community. And in Florida, I had struggled with anxiety and difficulty breathing, and
Hmm.
even thoughts of doing harm to my own body, my life. And it was
Hmm.
it was so demonic. And that was one of an indicator that we were outside of God's plan, and we needed to
Yeah.
go back, and we needed to walk ourselves back into the will of God, into the place that God had us. And so isolation is dangerous.
Hmm.
uh, I think community is super important. Like I said, it looks different in different seasons. So if you don't have like a big friend group, that's okay. Like
Yeah.
you do not need a big friend group. Honestly, like even if it's just one person, it could be your mom, your dad, someone that and if you're married, your spouse, like
Hmm.
that relationship, that is that's also your ministry as
Yeah.
well. And so community looks different, and it's defined differently for everybody. So like I said, right now our community is family. My community is my wife, and what
Hmm.
God is about to do next. And also I keep in touch with my best friend Gospel, who's back in
Hmm.
Seattle. um, it's really funny because we both are kind of going through the exact same thing at the exact same time. And
Yeah.
ever since we met, it's always been that way for the past 5 years. I don't know why, but it's literally been that way for the past 5 years. And so my wife and I, we are kind of that's like the first little chunk of community that I believe is God wants us to prioritize, because he's going to
Hmm.
use, God is getting
Yeah.
ready. God is getting ready to do something with Vision of Leo, with me, and it also involves my wife. And
Hmm.
so nurturing that relationship above all things, above a career, above music, even above the ministry, is like number one.
Yeah.
Uh, Number two, in my life, my friendship with Gospel. I didn't get to talk much about him today, but he is my absolute brother for life.
I love that.
He was born in Nigeria, West Africa. His story is insane, to the point where we lived in LA at the same time and we didn't even know. Uh,
Wow.
but long story short, he's my best friend, and we're walking through life together right now.
Hmm.
Uh, so my community doesn't look like a very big or cool like friend group. Like it's not like no vlog squad type of
That's
thing or
right.
anything
That's
like
right.
that. Um, but they're people that God put in my life for a reason.
Yeah.
My wife is there for life. My brother Gospel is also there for life. He also keeps me accountable too.
Hmm.
Um, so my community recently has switched from a bigger group to a smaller circle,
Yeah.
and I think that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't think that's bad.
No.
And as God works on Vision of Leo and expands that vision, I think community is going to start to be very interesting based on just what God has spoken to me. So, like I said before, to be continued. I'm so
Hmm.
excited for what God is going to do next. And yeah, don't how do I want to say it? Don't fret if your community doesn't look like someone else's community.
Yeah. I like that.
Um, because comparison is a very dangerous thing. And also, if you don't have anybody, as corny as it sounds, you have the Spirit of the Lord with you always.
Amen. Yeah.
Uh, and I remember when I was in Florida, like I got delivered from the spirit of anxiety because we didn't have anybody. I had no one. I would, call my buddy. Emily would know about it, but like I was still dealing with this spiritual problem.
Hmm.
And at the end of the day, the only one that could deliver me from that was God.
Yeah.
I remember I was listening to a spontaneous, like a Maverick City like session on YouTube or something like that.
Hmm.
And Chandler Morris said this thing. He said, "There is healing in your worship." And in a moment where I felt at my lowest, where I
Yeah.
felt like I was at the darkest place I had ever been. And on Instagram, it didn't look like that.
That's right.
It looked like I was having a blast at the beach, just living it up. But I was truly at my lowest. It was bad. I had such
Hmm.
difficulty breathing. And Chandler Moore said, "There is healing in your worship." And in that moment, with my wife next to me, just praying over me, I started worshiping God
Hmm.
authentically and with everything that I had. And in the moment where my only community in that moment of healing was the Lord, I this I'll try to keep it not as like graphic, but literally
Nah, man.
something came out of my chest and I started
Yeah.
coughing, and I ran to the sink and I spit it out.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it was. It was dark in the apartment, but I flushed it and I started weeping. And bro, in that moment, I could take, and this gets me emotional every time, but I could take the first deep breath I had ever taken
Wow. That's amazing.
in the longest time.
I love that.
And after that moment, I looked at my wife and we're like, we got to go back. Like we got to move back.
Yeah.
And so, and what's crazy is that God healed me even in an area where I was disobedient in.
Hmm.
God still pursued me and chased me down and healed me from, problems breathing, even when I was living in paradise, my
Yeah.
own paradise. So I would encourage everybody to, define what community looks like to you. And if it doesn't look like your neighbor, that's okay, because at the end of the day, like God is here for you. And
Yeah.
sometimes to experience deliverance, to experience healing, to even experience to even feel like we're not alone, we just have to submit everything to God, and
That's right.
he reveals himself to us. So yeah, community is important.
Yeah. 100%, man. It really is. And you said, community doesn't have to look like everyone else's. And I
Yeah.
think that's something that I struggle with because growing up, I thought, a massive group of people or massive following, whatever, was community. And as I got married, it changed for the season that we
Yeah.
were in. My wife and I, we have a 5-month-old son now, and our community is now changing again.
Yeah.
And I can see it going to change in the future. And
Yeah.
so it's not a bad thing, like you said, to have a small group of people, because one, they hold you accountable.
Yeah.
They're the people that know you inside and out. They're not just people that came around 2 days ago and they want to know everything about you, but they're ones that are like, I want to authentically know this person and get to know this person,
Yeah.
which is really cool. And so I just think, like, what you just had to say for the people listening and tuning in, that is the most important thing, not to compare yourself with other people. Whatever
Mhm.
God is putting in your heart, like, chase after that.
Yeah.
I like to think, if because I'm seeing this in my own life. You said you're 27. I'm 28 now, and
Mhm.
I'm starting to see God do some things in my life where I'm starting to think about the fact of, well, God, I don't know if I want to do that because I've never seen it done before, and that's kind of been my biggest setback and fear. And I'm starting to realize, well, you know, there's a lot of things, even if we read the Bible or if we look at history, there's a lot of things people have done that's never been done before until so and so did it to start
Right.
and set a path. And I like to think God's doing that with you. I like to think God's doing that with me with some stuff. And I just
Yeah.
think, again, with anyone listening, if you feel that you're in a place where you're the only one who's doing it, if you're doing it
Yeah.
with God, you're doing it with God. And that's the most
Woo.
important thing, like you shared. And so, Edgar, like,
Yeah.
again, man, keep doing what you're doing, because God's got a huge plan,
Thank you,
for
bro.
not just
Likewise.
for Vision of Leo, but for you, your wife, your family, the dreams that you have. And I'm excited to keep watching and see what God does, and
Mm.
can't wait to see more.
Thank you, bro. I appreciate it. This was so fun, man. We gotta do this
Yeah,
again. We gotta do this
dude,
again, bro.
100%, 100%, man. I'm gonna take you up on that.
Let's go. Let's
All right,
go.
Edgar, have an amazing rest of your day, and I'm sure we'll talk again soon, bro.
Thank you, brother. We will. Peace.
All right, take care. Bye now.